My brother's wife smirked at Thanksgiving and said, "Your parents only love you when you're paying their bills." My mom laughed and added, "You're not welcome unless you clear your brother's credit card debt." I stood up, smiled, and said, "You're right. And that's exactly why you'll never see me again." Their faces dropped when they realized they had just lost their favorite ATM forever. This happened over the past year, and I'm finally ready to share the whole story. It's long, but stick with me. The ending is absolutely worth it. Some details have been changed for privacy. TLDR at the bottom for those who want the quick version. But you're missing out if you skip to it. I, 35M, own a successful chain of fitness centers across North Texas. 4 locations with plans for 2 more by next year. We do about $1.2 million in revenue annually. I employ around 50 people between trainers, front desk staff, maintenance crews, and administrative workers. Not bad for a guy who started with nothing but a GI Bill and a dream after getting out of the Marines at 23. But this story isn't about my business success or how I built my empire from scratch. It's about how my toxic, dysfunctional family tried to bleed me dry for years, and what happened when I finally decided to completely destroy them instead of just walking away like a reasonable person would do. Growing up in suburban Dallas, my family dynamic was crystal clear from day one. There were 2 kids in our household, me and my younger brother, Cameron. He's 32 now. Cameron was always the golden boy who could do absolutely no wrong in our parents' eyes, while I was permanently cast as the responsible one who never needed attention, help, or recognition. You know the type of family setup. Cameron got praised enthusiastically for tying his shoes correctly, while I had to earn everything through blood, sweat, tears, and perfect behavior. When I was 17 and a senior in high school, I was working 2 different part-time jobs after school every single day to save up money for a decent used car. I worked at a local grocery store bagging groceries and collecting shopping carts, and I also worked weekends at a landscaping company doing manual labor in the Texas heat. Meanwhile, Cameron got arrested for shoplifting video games at the local mall. And instead of facing any real consequences for his criminal behavior, my parents bought him a brand new Honda Civic to help build his confidence and self-esteem. When I asked where my car was after 8 months of saving every penny I earned, my dad looked at me and said, "You're more responsible and mature. You'll figure it out yourself like you always do." After high school graduation, I immediately joined the Marines because college wasn't financially possible for me. Our family was supposedly struggling financially and couldn't afford tuition. Meanwhile, Cameron magically got his full college experience courtesy of Mom and Dad's mysterious secret stash of money that somehow appeared out of thin air whenever their precious baby boy needed something important. I did 5 long years in the Marines, served 2 deployments overseas, and came back home with discipline, work ethic, and real-world experience. I used my GI Bill benefits to get a business degree while working full-time at a local gym chain, learning every aspect of the fitness industry from the ground up. I lived in a studio apartment that was basically a glorified closet, ate nothing but cheap pasta, canned tuna, and peanut butter sandwiches for 3 straight years, and saved every single penny I could to open my first gym location. Cameron, he dropped out of college after 3 years of constant partying, changing majors 4 different times, and maintaining a barely passing GPA. But according to my parents, that was just him finding his authentic path in life and exploring his creative options. By the time I turned 30, I owned 2 highly successful gyms, had purchased a nice house in a good neighborhood, and was systematically building real generational wealth. Cameron was 27 years old and had never held any job for more than 8 months total. His pattern was predictable. He'd get hired somewhere entry-level, work just long enough to qualify for unemployment benefits, then get himself intentionally fired and live off government assistance while looking for the right career opportunity. But guess who was still considered the family favorite? The guy who had never accomplished anything meaningful or productive in his entire adult life. Then Cameron met Jessica, and that's when our family situation went from merely annoying to absolutely insane. Jessica was literally every negative stereotype about materialistic, shallow women rolled into one insufferable person. She had fake chest implants, fake lip injections, fake eyelash extensions, and acrylic nails so long and elaborate she couldn't perform basic tasks like typing or opening car doors. She'd never worked a legitimate job in her entire life, but somehow always managed to have the newest iPhone model, designer purses worth thousands of dollars, and clothes that cost more than most people's monthly mortgage payments. She attached herself to Cameron like a parasitic leech because he was stupid and naive enough to think he could somehow afford her ridiculously expensive lifestyle on his unemployment checks. And my parents, they absolutely loved her because she was supposedly motivating Cameron to be more ambitious and helping him mature into a responsible adult. Yeah, motivating him to find increasingly creative ways to spend money he didn't have and would never earn. The girl also had the intellectual capacity of a houseplant. I remember one particularly painful family dinner where she asked me if my fitness centers were like Planet Fitness but more expensive, and then proceeded to confidently explain to me how the fitness industry worked based entirely on what she'd seen in romantic comedies and reality TV shows. This brilliant analysis was coming from someone who genuinely believed that cardio exercise was harmful to your health because it makes you too skinny and weak. About 2.5 years ago, the phone calls from my parents started getting significantly more frequent and urgent. These weren't casual, "Hey, how's business going?" social calls, but rather direct, "Cameron needs help with his electricity bill," emergency calls, or "Cameron's car needs expensive repairs," crisis calls, or my personal favorite recurring theme, "Cameron and Jessica are having an unexpectedly difficult month financially," bailout calls. At first, the requested amounts were relatively small and seemingly reasonable. $400 here for utilities, $600 there for car problems. I'm not gonna lie, I helped out because I genuinely figured that's what family members do for each other during tough times, right? But every single time I transferred money to help them out, Cameron never once called me personally to express gratitude or explain the situation. It was always Mom making the initial request on his behalf and Mom calling afterward to say thanks. Like he was still a helpless child who couldn't handle his own communications. Then the requested amounts started getting significantly larger, and the accompanying excuses became increasingly creative and elaborate. $1, $200 for their deposit on a much nicer apartment because their current place was supposedly affecting Jessica's severe allergies. She wanted to live somewhere more Instagram-worthy. $2,800 when Cameron allegedly got laid off unexpectedly, which I later discovered actually meant he got fired for showing up 2 hours late 3 consecutive days while hungover. $3,500 when Jessica supposedly needed emergency dental work, which turned out to be purely cosmetic veneers because she wanted to become a social media influencer. The breaking point should have been last Christmas when Jessica posted elaborate Instagram stories documenting her week-long luxury spa retreat in Scottsdale, complete with expensive treatments and designer shopping. During the exact same week that Cameron had called me crying and asking for $2,200 for urgent car repairs that couldn't wait. But I was still foolishly playing the good brother role like a complete idiot. The real wake-up call came 8 months ago when I went to Mom and Dad's house for our regular Sunday family dinner. I walked through the front door, and Jessica was practically shoving her left hand in everyone's faces, showing off this absolutely enormous engagement ring that had to cost at least $20,000. "Look what my amazing Cameron surprised me with," she squealed like an overexcited teenager. "Isn't it absolutely perfect? I've been wanting something exactly like this for months and months." I looked directly at Cameron, who was desperately avoiding eye contact like his life depended on it. For weeks earlier, he had called me crying genuine tears about needing $3,800 for unexpected medical bills because he didn't have health insurance coverage. "That's quite an impressive ring," I said, trying to keep my voice neutral. "Must have been a very significant purchase." Jessica giggled and did this ridiculous little hair flip gesture. "Oh, Cameron always finds a way to give me exactly what I deserve. He's so generous and thoughtful about showing his love. Yeah, generous with my hard-earned money and thoughtful about hiding it from me." During that same uncomfortable dinner, Jessica made several passive-aggressive comments about how some people just aren't relationship material while staring directly at me with obvious judgment. I was 35 and single entirely by choice. I'd been too focused on building my business empire and securing my financial future to get serious about dating or marriage. But she acted like I was some kind of pathetic failure because I wasn't married to someone who constantly spent my money. "Maybe you should focus less on those gym things and more on finding a wife," she said with this incredibly condescending smirk. "I mean, what's the point of making all that money if you don't have anyone special to spend it on?" My mom actually nodded in complete agreement like Jessica was dispensing profound wisdom. She makes a really good point, Alex. You can't work every single day forever. That night, lying in my own bed in my own house that I'd paid for with my own money, I made a firm decision. I was completely done being their personal bank account. Things got surprisingly quiet for a few months after I stopped responding to their increasingly desperate money requests. I genuinely figured maybe they'd finally learned their lesson about financial responsibility, or perhaps found some other gullible victim to fund their ridiculous fantasy lifestyle. I was incredibly, spectacularly wrong about both possibilities. 2 weeks before Cameron and Jessica's wedding, I got an extremely passive-aggressive text message from my mother that read, "It's been very disappointing not having your support during such an important time in your brother's life. He's always looked up to you and expected you to be his best man." I stared at that message for a solid 5 minutes in stunned silence. Not only had I never been asked to be best man before that moment, but they had already chosen a destination wedding venue in Hawaii, knowing full well that I couldn't realistically close all 5 of my fitness centers for a full week to fly out for a beach ceremony. I replied very calmly and professionally, "I was never asked to be best man. I'd love to attend the wedding, but unfortunately, I'm not able to shut down my business operations for a full week. I wish Cameron and Jessica the absolute best." Cue the inevitable nuclear meltdown. My mom called me shrieking about how I was selfish and disrespectful and intentionally trying to ruin Cameron's big day. My dad left me a long voicemail calling me financially arrogant and saying I needed to stop lording my success over the rest of the family. Jessica sent me a scathing DM on Instagram saying I was jealous of their love story and would die alone in a mansion full of dumbbells and protein shakes. Cameron finally sent me a text that simply said, "I can't believe you're doing this to me. You've always treated me like I was less than you. Thanks for proving I was right all along." I didn't respond to any of it. I blocked them all on every single platform and removed myself from the family group chat. I was done. Absolutely done. The wedding happened without me, and based on the pictures that trickled out onto social media, it was just as shallow and obnoxious as I'd imagined. Complete with white sand photo shoots, champagne toasts, and matching silk robes for the bridal party. Cameron looked completely dead behind the eyes in every single picture, but maybe that was just his way of expressing lifelong commitment. For weeks after the wedding, my parents called me in a panic because Cameron and Jessica's rent check had bounced, and they were on the verge of eviction. They had apparently upgraded to a luxury high-rise apartment in downtown Chicago, despite having no legitimate income between them. My parents wanted me to loan them $5,000 to help them stay afloat during this unexpected transition period. I calmly said, "No, I'm not funding their fantasy anymore." My mom responded by sobbing hysterically and calling me a heartless monster. My dad said I was abandoning the family. I said, "If by family you mean 2 narcissists and 2 enablers, then yes, I am." I hung up and didn't speak to any of them for 6 months. That brings us to last Thursday, Thanksgiving dinner. I had absolutely no intention of attending this year, but my aunt, my dad's sister, called me personally and begged me to show up because it was her turn to host, and she really wanted the whole extended family to be together under one roof. I reluctantly agreed, mainly because I missed seeing my cousins and didn't want to punish them for the idiocy of my immediate family. The second I walked into the house, I felt the tension in the air like a tangible fog. Cameron and Jessica were already seated at the dining table, looking like reality TV villains who'd been edited for maximum drama. My parents gave me cold, tight-lipped smiles like they were doing me some enormous favor just by acknowledging my existence. I ignored all of them and went to chat with my cousins about normal adult topics like careers, travel, and sports. Dinner was served, and for a brief 20 minutes, things actually felt almost tolerable. Then Jessica decided to make a speech. "I just want to say how grateful I am for real family," she said loudly, looking directly at me while holding Cameron's hand. "Not just people who show up when it's convenient or refuse to support you because they think money makes them better than everyone else." My mom actually laughed and added, "Some people only come around when they want to feel superior. They forget that family means helping each other, not judging." My dad nodded solemnly like someone had just read a scripture verse. I sat there in stunned silence for a moment, then calmly stood up, picked up my wine glass and said, "You're absolutely right. Family does mean helping each other. Which is why I spent tens of thousands of dollars funding your delusional lifestyle while you mocked my success behind my back. It's why I answered every desperate phone call, paid every fabricated emergency bill, and showed up to every dinner where I was insulted for being single or focused on my business. But you know what? That stops tonight." The room went completely silent except for the sound of Jessica gasping like I just slapped her across the face. I looked directly at my mom and said, "You laughed when she insulted me. You defended her when she scammed me. You called me selfish for setting boundaries. So let me make something perfectly clear. You will never see me again. Not at Christmas. Not at birthdays. Not at funerals. You've lost the right to call me family." Then I walked out of the house without another word. I got in my car, drove home, poured myself a glass of bourbon, and sat by the fireplace in my ridiculously expensive mansion. Paid for by my own blood, sweat, and relentless work ethic. And for the first time in years, I felt truly free. No more guilt. No more manipulation. No more toxic family drama disguised as love. Just peace, quiet, and the knowledge that I finally chose myself. And it was the best damn choice I've ever made.